Hi, everyone, and thank you for joining us for this special edition of UnProcessed Sugar. As a lot of you have heard, I'm sure, in the last week, the United States federal government has come out with new nutritional guidelines. The Health and Human Services Secretary, Bobby Kennedy Jr., and the Department of Agricultural Secretary, Brooke Rollins, had a press conference last week when they announced these. It's big, big news and a move for the better. One thing that kept coming up as I'm watching this and doing more reading about it, something we touch on in almost every episode: eat whole foods. Really, stay away from ultra-processed foods and eat whole foods. But if you would, please be kind enough to hit that subscribe button. It helps us grow our numbers, which allows us to bring this content to more and more people. I hope you're getting something out of these. I know I am as we go along this path together. But the new nutritional guidelines came out. But first, let's talk about the old food pyramid. The old food pyramid, we all remember that, I'm sure, right? A graphic's going to pop up here for us. And the bottom of it had 6 to 11 servings of carbohydrates a day. And at the very top was fats and protein. So it was a diet that was really based on a foundation of heavy, heavy carbohydrate intake. There's no doubt, at least in my mind, and this is borne out by the literature, that this has led to a big-time obesity epidemic and a type 2 diabetes epidemic in our country. You start off with a base of 6 to 11 servings of carbohydrates a day. That's not going to end well, I don't think. But every 5 years, these guidelines get revisited, but basically that food pyramid sat around for about 20 years. Now, these don't just sit on a website for people to maybe go peruse. This is what determines what our children are fed in school lunches and school meals, what hospitals utilize to feed their patients and their staff, our military, our soldiers, what they're being fed. The men and women out in the field rely on these. And federal nutrition programs like the SNAP program, the food stamp programs. These guidelines heavily influence all of those programs. So these affect hundreds of millions of people every day. So the old pyramid came around in 1992, and as I mentioned, the base had 6 to 11 servings of carbohydrates. That would be things like bread, cereal, pasta, rice. So carbohydrates form the foundation of the American diet. Fat became a scapegoat. Fat became vilified, especially saturated fat became vilified. Proteins and fat were at the very top of the pyramid, and we were told to eat those sparingly. Red meat, bad. That's what we were led to believe for a long, long time. Well, in 2011, that food pyramid was basically thrown out, and myplate.gov, I would encourage you to check that website out. That's the government site where they put all these nutritional guidelines at. But for 20 years, we were told to eat a diet high in carbohydrates. And again, direct link to the obesity epidemic and the type 2 diabetes epidemic. So, okay, well, why did it fail? What's bad about it? Well, first, as I've been mentioning it, heavy, heavy carbohydrate loading. This results in blood sugar spikes, then insulin spikes, and you have constant insulin stimulation. Now, what that can do is the cells can become resistant to the insulin, telling them, bring the sugar, bring the carbohydrate into the cell. So it stays out in their system and it gets stored as fat. That's what's called insulin resistance. But even if you don't get insulin resistance, you're still at this constant insulin spike that spikes your cortisol as well, which can lead to a lot of other problems, trouble with sleep and stress and anxiety. So it also, in addition to the fat storage, you're going to be hungry more quickly and you're going to have metabolic dysfunction, like we just talked about. So it also had a one-size-fits-all approach. It didn't take into account if somebody was insulin resistant or insulin sensitive. It didn't take into account whether they were active or sedentary. So the timing of all this, again, if you look at a linear graph of type 2 diabetes and obesity, it was significantly accelerated with the introduction of this food pyramid. Now, correlation does not equal causation, but it sure seems pretty consistent, doesn't it? And then that food pyramid was heavily influenced by industry. We'll get into that some other time. But for right now, in 2011, myplate.gov came out, and that replaced that food pyramid. It did several things that I think were a move in the right direction. Gave protein a lot more visibility. It was still carb heavy though, but it gave protein a more important place on your plate, so to speak. It was still calorie focused. It wasn't metabolically focused, and it was still silent on ultra-processed foods. So the new pyramid, the new guidelines, I should say, they take into account a lot more factors that are important. Nutrition has to respect one's metabolism, the concept of insulin resistance or sensitivity. You got to heavily promote whole foods and address the ultra-processed food problem we've got in this country. 60 to 70% of children's calories are coming from ultra-processed foods this time here in America. That's insane. I say it all the time. We're trading our health for convenience. We got to stop doing that. Whereas you're going to pay for it in the long run, right? And in the short run, we're going to pay for it a lot too, as we've talked about a lot of different things that happen with ultra-processed foods, in particular with our gut and our biome. Our next episode of our regularly scheduled episodes will be about 2 weeks from now, and it's going to be on gut health. And I think that'll be really interesting for everyone, myself especially, but it really talks about how ultra-processed foods affect our gut. Now, I'm not anti-guideline, but I am anti-guidelines that ignore human physiology and human metabolism. If a guideline leads to a nation getting sicker, it's not a guideline, it's a warning sign. So let's talk about the new guidelines. And again, myplate.gov, you can get more information, get some nice graphics of this. We'll be popping some up here on the screen for you. Number one, it's centered on whole, nutrient-dense food. Whole foods. I know I'm a broken record, but really, try to eat whole foods. Big time more focus on protein. Basically, they've doubled the amount of protein we should take in a day. In the past, it was about 0.8 grams per kilogram. Now they're recommending 1.6 grams. So that's basically doubled. So what is that in pounds? Well, we want about 3/4 of a gram per pound. So if you weigh 100 pounds, you want 75 grams of protein a day, okay? Fruits and vegetables, daily staples, get them in the form of whole foods. We're going to talk some more about fruits and vegetables and some good carbs, because that's a big source of carbs. Carbs are still important. They're still there. They're not the base of the pyramid anymore, though. So they're still recommended, of course, but the emphasis is on getting them in the form of whole grains and more in fiber. And we're going to talk about some good carbs and how you can get those in what forms. Dietary fats, get, again, whole foods, nuts, seeds, seafood, dairy, olives, avocados. Avocados are a great source of good fat. They got vilified a while ago because they are high in cholesterol, but it's good fat. And we had a whole episode on cholesterol that I would encourage you to check out. We need cholesterol. Our body makes 70% of the cholesterol we use, and 30% comes from our diet. But we need cholesterol. We've got to have it to function properly. They finally are talking about ultra-processed food. No added sugar, and try to avoid ultra-processed food. Now, how much sugar can you add? Well, about 10 grams, which is 2 teaspoons full per meal. Okay, let's just call that 10 grams a day. As of today, the average American has about 17 teaspoons, and I was just saying we should have about 10. So we're having almost double the amount of added sugar in our diet on a daily basis than we really should to be healthy. So alcohol, I heard Dr. Oz say just don't have it for breakfast. Well, first of all, alcohol is a poison. I'm not trying to sound hyperbolic, but it is. In any amount, it's not good for us, but our bodies tolerate it. Our bodies are resilient. So I'm not going to say don't drink, but have moderation with everything, right? Individualization and flexibility is finally being discussed, tailoring this to the individual. The N of one, you're the individual. Everything should be tailored for you and what works best for you. That war on saturated fats, I'm laughing because it's kind of funny how this war on saturated fats, it was fiction, but it was real, but it was based in fiction. That's ended. But right now, more than half of the adults in the United States have a chronic disease or illness that's related to their diet and nothing more. Half. That's so easy to fix just from what we eat. So we didn't fail the food pyramid at all. The food pyramid failed us. Good carbohydrates. Well, you want them in several different forms. Vegetables, they bring us fiber, they bring water, micronutrients. They minimize the glucose spike. So you get some carbs, but you don't get this big glucose spike, so you get a really small insulin spike. Overall, it's much healthier for us. You can get those with leafy greens, spinach, kale, arugula, chard, not quite sure what chard is. Does it look like a celery, like a big celery, I think? Cruciferous vegetables, things that are crunchy, broccoli, cauliflower, root vegetables, carrots, beets, potatoes, sweet potatoes, and zucchini and asparagus. All those are great vegetables. You get it. They're all good carbohydrates, and you get a lot of fiber with all those too. So you're getting two birds with one stone there. Legumes. Legumes are beans, chickpeas, kidney beans, lentils. They're high in protein, and they're really high in fiber. Because of those two things, they digest slower. So you have more satiety. That means you stay full longer. You don't get this hunger spikes you get with the sugar crashes. And you subsequently get better insulin control. Whole fruits. Now, I love fruit, and I love like frozen cherries. But 3 servings a day really is about all we want to get because of the amount of sugar that's typically in these. But again, fruits have a lot of fiber. They have a lot of water. But again, try to be limiting that to 2 or 3 servings a day. Berries, apples, pears, citrus, oranges, kiwis, all that. Tubers, potatoes and sweet potatoes. Tubers growing very starchy. Now, if you cook them and then let them cool down and you can reheat them, it does something that changes the starch, spiking everything. I'm not sure of the exact science behind it, but basically you don't get such a big insulin spike because of the glucose spike from the starches of that. And last are grains, whole intact grains. So best intact, not milled, but steel cut oats, quinoa, wild rice, and buckwheat are all good sources of grains, whole intact grains. So carbohydrates in and of themselves aren't inherently bad. We want to have them in a whole food source, and it will lower your insulin spikes, which will subsequently lead to a more stable blood sugar, less fat storage. I hope you found this helpful. I know I did, as I did the research for this and did some of the reading for it. I think it's wonderful that the government has put out these new guidelines that affect literally hundreds of millions of people a day. Again, myplate.gov. Also, please check out UnProcessedSugar.com. Subscribe. Get the emails whenever we post new episodes, and I really appreciate you joining us. Come back next time for Unprocessed Sugar. Hi, I'm Dr. David Sugar, a doctor here in Florida, and thank you for joining us on our podcast. A quick note, this is for educational and general information purposes only. Listening to this podcast does not constitute a doctor-patient relationship. And please consult with your own healthcare provider before making any changes to your own care. If you are having a medical emergency, please call 911 or your local emergency number. Any items, tests, medications that we talk about or discuss are for information purposes only and are not an endorsement. Once again, thank you for joining us, and please see the website for the full disclosure and waiver. Thank you very much.